When you look at the Los Angeles Clippers heading into the 2025-26 season, the big question is simple. How good are they really after this offseason? On paper, this team looks deeper than it's ever been. They added Brook Lopez, one of the league's best rim protectors who also stretches the floor, John Collins, a front-court scorer who brings energy and rebounding, Bradley Beal, a proven shot creator who can finally play a secondary role, and even Chris Paul, returning as a veteran floor general to steady the half-court. Of course, they lost a key contributor in Norman Powell, and his absence does leave a hole on the wing. But the Clippers didn't just swap names, they reshaped their roster into a lineup with layers of scoring, defense, and experience. The question now isn't just whether they improved, but whether these moves make them one of the deepest and most dangerous teams in the NBA. The Clippers didn't just add talent, they added roles and redundancy. Brook Lopez gives them a proven rim deterrent and floor spacing center who can play both as a backup to and alongside Ivica Zubac in a small ball or staggered lineup minutes. That's a very different asset than a straight minutes for minutes replacement. Lopez's value isn't only his shot blocking, it's his ability to stretch defenses with the three-point shot, to switch into drop coverage comfortably, and to patrol the paint when the Clippers want to run a Harden, Beal, Leonard pick and roll without sacrificing rim protection. The move for Lopez was a clear win-now chess move, relatively cheap short-term deal for a veteran who can salvage late-game defensive matchups and create easier spacing for shooters. That signing was reported by ESPN and framed as a 2-year, $18 million deal, cheap enough to preserve flexibility while adding a positional high-impact vet. John Collins represents a more overt front-court upgrade in the power forward spot. He brings gravity as a roll man, offensive rebounding, and pick-and-pop spacing that the Clippers have lacked. Collins' skill set fits Tyronn Lue's offense because he can finish in traffic, stretch the floor off the catch, and play the kind of semi-switchable defense that Lue currently asks of his front court, especially with Kawhi Leonard and other switchable wings taking on perimeter duties. The context matters. Los Angeles shipped Norman Powell in a 3-team sequence that ultimately brought Collins in and moved Powell out, a transaction that traded one-way high-minute wing scoring for multi-positional front court depth and a different offensive profile. Collins isn't a lockdown defender, but paired with Kawhi, Zubac, and Lopez, he becomes a matchup problem late in games when the Clippers want multiple scoring outlets and offensive rebounding. Bradley Beal's arrival is the splash that changes the conception of the Clippers' backcourt rotation. Beal came in after a buyout and agreed to a short, affordable deal that makes him low-risk, high-upside in a Harden-led offense. What Beal gives the Clippers is veteran shot creation, catch-and-shoot gravity, and off-ball scoring that can materially reduce load on James Harden and on Kawhi when he's involved as a cutter. At his best, Beal is a 20-plus volume scorer who still commands attention from defenses. At the very least, as a micro-rotation piece, he turns contested possessions into wide-open looks for the rest of the roster by drawing help and collapsing defenses. The reports marked his deal as a 2-year, roughly $11 million contract after a buyout, again, affordable relative to the talent, and structured in a way that preserves roster flexibility. Bringing Chris Paul back for his second tenure in a Clippers jersey is both symbolic and practical. Symbolically, it's about veteran orchestration. CP3 is one of the best pick-and-roll conductors in NBA history, and even at age 40, he reads rotations and micromanages game tempo in a way very few can. Practically, Paul gives the Clippers an elite half-court facilitator for crunch time and lineups where Harden's scoring or playing off the ball. The team's reported 1-year veteran minimum style deal, reported around $3.6 million, is clearly aimed at maximizing on-court IQ and late-game execution without compromising long-term cap flexibility. The combination of Harden, Paul, and Beal on paper sounds kinda awkward until you realize the Clippers aren't trying to put all three on the floor in the same heavy-minute rotation continuously. Instead, those three create staggered playmaking and multiple usable looks the coaching staff can deploy to keep opponents guessing. Losing Norman Powell stings, and it explains why the Clippers felt the need to add frontcourt punch. Powell was a reliable two-way wing who could close games, tough on-ball defense, contested catch-and-shoot scoring, and the kind of late-clock decisiveness many bench units lack. His departure, as he was moved in a 3-team deal, reduces Los Angeles' pure wing/guard depth with a particular set of defensive instincts and instant offense off the bench. But the Clippers essentially swapped a single high-usage wing for multiple players who cover more minutes and different needs across the roster. That distribution of minutes can be an advantage in extended series where matchups matter and injuries happen. In short, the Clippers traded a known closer for lineup versatility and while that costs them a specific finite skill set, Powell's late game scoring and wing defending, it also buys them more matchup dependent options. Depth is not only adding names, it's about overlapping competencies. With Kawhi Leonard still the defensive fulcrum and Ivica Zubac the baseline rim protector, the Clippers now have Lopez as a rotation center who can sit in space or anchor a second unit, Collins as a bouncy pick-and-roll complement who also rebounds in spaces, Beal as another high-level shooting and off-ball threat, and Paul to manage minutes when Harden doesn't. That's 5 players who can play heavy minutes at multiple positions and create offense in differing ways. The crucial bit, when one piece is neutralized, say Kawhi is struggling with durability or Harden's being hounded, the Clippers have legitimate alternatives that aren't just more of the same, but rather different tactical answers. For example, running more through Collins' interior gravity, using Lopez staggered minutes to protect the rim, or leaning on Beal's off-ball shooting. Defense and floor spacing now have a more reliable quote-unquote safety net. The Clippers' Achilles in some playoff series has been the inability to guard switchy lineups without sacrificing offense to generate consistent rim protection when Leonard's not on the floor. Lopez and Zubac together give them rim deterrence packages they lacked. Lopez changes shots at the rim and forces different attack vectors, while Zubac's screen and rollers remain a tough matchup. On the perimeter, Collins and Beal are imperfect defenders, but they're athletic and long enough to provide credible deterrence on certain switches, especially when Kawhi's in the rotation. Tyronn Lue's challenge will be to keep rotations staggered, so the team never fields a unit with 3 low defensive IQ scorers at once. If Lue manages minutes well, the team's defensive rating should hold steady even as offensive firepower increases. Chemistry and minutes management are the obvious questions. Adding multiple veteran ball-dominant wings means Tyronn Lue must choreograph usage rates, blow-by defensive assignments, and micro-rotations to avoid clogging possessions, especially in playoff series where half-court offense is premium. Harden's role is already a question mark because his usage and shot selection affects spacing. Adding Beal gives Harden an off-ball partner, though, who can score but may also compete for touches in certain sets. Chris Paul's presence helps here because he can close games or run sets where Harden is less central. Paul's play calling can reduce Harden's fatigue, put Beal in easier scoring pockets, and maintain discipline late in games. The Clippers front office structured most of the new deals to be short-term / low cost enough to preserve future flexibility, which suggests they're consciously trying to avoid long-term roster congestion. This offseason pushed the Clippers from an elite but somewhat shallow contender into a multi-path contender with tactical flexibility. They gave Tyronn Lue options to tailor lineups to opponent strengths and to stagger stars so the team doesn't collapse when any single player needs rest. Losing Norman Powell cost them a distinct wing defender and closer, but the additions of Collins, Lopez, Beal, and Paul offset that loss by offering more nuanced lineups, spacing plus rim deterrence plus alternate creators. If the Clippers can keep Kawhi relatively healthy, and if Harden and Beal blend into complementary roles rather than 2 co-primary scorers fighting for the last shot, the Clippers' depth could be the critical differentiator in a wide-open West. If you want the one-sentence summary, they're deeper and more adaptable, and that may matter more across a 7-game grind than a single superstar addition would have.